Hey everyone, so this is Richie with Thunder Media. I'm here with a Roofer's Helper. Today I'm joined by one of our amazing sponsors, Matt Frugé with SquareDash. Matt, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
podcast. Excited to have you on today
Excited to be here. Thanks a
and
lot.
talk about helping roofers.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
So tell us about you and what brought you to this point.
I spent a little time in the Navy right after high school. I was a avionics electronic technician, where I was basically like a systems troubleshooter.
Okay.
Um,
What got you into the Navy?
Actually, funny enough, photography and videography. I was
Okay.
really into that in high school, and I found out that the Navy had photographers mates, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to travel the world, build my portfolio, get money for school. And the recruiters let me believe that for the first like 3 weeks of, when you're onboarding or whatever. And then they were like, oh yeah, there's like a 2-year waiting list on that. So we're gonna need to figure out something else for you. So I ended up going into aviation. So
Okay.
yeah, little right turn there, but it worked out. It was great. It was a great
Talk
experience.
about marketing.
Do what?
Talk about marketing.
Yeah, exactly. Recruiters are just like, the best salesman in the planet.
There's got photographer spots, just not available.
Yeah, it's awesome. Photographers mates, they're awesome.
Yeah, I've seen the Marines as like, photograph the world and the best things ever. And I've almost actually fallen for that. I thought, man, that'd be
Yeah.
cool. It's a good thing I did it now that I know.
It's a great gig if you can get in, right? And
At
their hook is like, "Hey, we'll get you in something else, and then after a couple of years, you can, cross right over."
that
And
point, you don't know who you are. You've lost
well, by that
credibility.
point, you're yeah, exactly. You're a completely different person. Yeah. No, but it just never
Okay.
works out that way. It's just the way they get
So
you
you
going.
get into the Navy.
Yeah, I got in the Navy. I got out in '03. Kind of bounced around a few sales jobs. I come from a long line of contractors. My dad was a
Okay.
industrial concrete contractor. My grandfather, his dad built bridges.
What was this?
Southeast Texas and Louisiana, kind of on the border
Okay.
there down in Beaumont, Texas.
I think a lot of bridges out there.
A lot of bridges, yeah. And yeah, if you've ever been across the 210 bridge in Lake Charles, my grandfather built that. Yeah, so pretty cool.
Easy.
So anyway, yeah, I moved up to the Dallas Fort Worth area in 2008 and worked for my first job was knocking doors at a roofing company. I thought it was gonna be like a throwaway job during the summer, and turns out I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I worked for a
Okay.
company for a couple of years, and then I started my own company in 2010.
Nice,
And
nice.
so I did that for, you know, 12, 13 years before realizing that there was kind of a hole in the market, a gap with the cash flow issues that contractors face, that contractors that predominantly deal with insurance claims, they're waiting to get paid out sometimes 60, 90, 120 days after they finish work. That was a problem for us. We did $4 or $5 million in business in 2018. Almost went out of business twice that year because of some bigger commercial jobs we took on, and cash flow was tight.
Insurance, commercial jobs.
Yes, and yeah, I was just like, man, there's got to be something out there. And the best I could find was like a merchant cash advance. Banks wouldn't lend to us.
Yep.
There was really no financial products available to
They
us.
don't really like roofers.
Yeah, they don't really like the seasonality and just the unpredictability. And let's face it, roofers just don't have a great financial track record holistically. So
Yep.
yeah, it was tough. And that's kind of what led us to developing SquareDash. It started as a internal CRM project that we were going to make for my roofing company, thinking that we were going to be able to make like this end-to-end OS for
Sure.
roofing. Kind of morphed into the real problem that was keeping me up at night, which was not knocking doors or leads or anything that. It was, how much money can we collect this week? How do we keep the business alive? Who can we pay this week? Who do we have to put off? It was that constant stress in the business that led us to finally land on what we are today. So
Super cool.
yeah.
So when it comes to the roofing industry, you mentioned you did primarily uh, insurance related work.
Yep.
Versus retail.
Yeah.
And that was mainly because of the market you were in.
Yeah, we're located in DFW, and
Ton of
I
hailstorms.
don't think anybody pays cash for a roof in North Texas. You
No reason.
wait till the next storm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So tell me about some of the struggles you faced specifically on that. Like, you just didn't have the processes in place. Like, what was keeping you from getting the cash flow you needed?
Yeah, I think like most roofing companies, you start off, you're not funded, right? You're rolling out of your own bankroll personally. And the quickest way to solve that is just go sell some roofs, right? Because there's big ticket amounts. It's, good margins in
Yep.
this business. And we found, like many other roofers, the back end of the business was kind of the last thing that got built out. We were really focused on getting deals and growing the front end of the business. And when it came to finding good people that understood the, financial principles of this type of business, when you're, dealing with third parties and waiting long time to get paid and multiple trades going on and things of that nature, you really need to find people that are well versed in that to bring into your business. And if you don't, you can really set yourself up for a lot of pain and heartache moving forward. And that's, kind of what happened to us. And we struggled for the first few years to find good people that understood that and stayed in the business and didn't have personal issues going on and this, that, and the other. And yeah, it was just kind of a constant struggle of building the back of the house. So
It's interesting that you bring up that the financial side was actually the problem, and not production or fulfillment or anything like that. I heard a stat the other day. The number one reason why marriages fall apart is finances,
finances, yeah.
and it's probably the same
Yeah.
with
Yeah, the
with
finances are kind of, they're tentacled into every aspect of your business. Sales and marketing drives everything, right? You need revenue coming in.
yeah,
Um,
managing that.
right. But, a contract for $30,000 is great, right? In the at face value for the
Sure.
business. But if it takes you 180 days, 6 months, 7 months to complete the full cycle of the job, it becomes a little less sparkly, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so it gets tough.
I've heard this before, that one of the best hires you can make is a bookkeeper, but not all bookkeepers understand the minutia of insurance-related billing and things like that. Can
Sure.
we talk a little bit about, what you've noticed, in regards to what a bookkeeper needs to know if they're gonna work for an insurance contractor?
Yeah, I think if a bookkeeper is going to work for really any contractor that, does more than one trade,
Okay.
um, they really need to be well versed in accrual-based accounting
Okay. So this is
versus
cat.
versus cash, and they need to understand work in progress or WIP accounting.
Okay.
Because where contractors get into trouble is they're taking customer deposits, ACV checks, deductibles, whatever it is. They're using a credit line at their material supplier that's got net 30 or net 60 terms on it, and they're kind of using that credit line as like the back end money on the job, as if it's like completing their payment cycle on the job. But what happens is, the minute that back end money, the actual back end money from your insurance carrier, takes 60, 90, 120 days to collect, and you've got net 30 at the supplier, you start having to dip into other job accounts, right? And taking money from deposits you've
Yep.
taken from other customers to run your business, right?
Robbing
Because
Peter to pay
you're
Paul.
robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Yep.
It's like the number one killer in our business is people getting in that cycle and not understanding that they really need to keep that money segregated and separated in separate accounts, not only in their bank account, but also in their chart of accounts and their balance sheet. And that's what WIP accounting does. It instead of recording your customer deposits as income, it keeps them, and your income shows up on your P&L, your profit and
Yep.
loss statement, your income statement. They put customer deposits in the deferred revenue account on their balance sheet, and it's a liability account, right? Because that is not your money yet, right? You haven't done the work. They haven't paid you in
It's
full.
below your expenses.
Well, it's on your balance sheet. It's not even on your income.
Not even on your.
Yeah, it's on your
Okay.
balance sheet of your company. It's a
Okay.
liability, because if what happens if the customer cancels? You got to give the money
Sweet.
back, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And
That's
so
wow. Interesting.
it's a liability. And then all of your COGS, your labor and material costs, before you complete the job, should be recorded in an asset account on your balance sheet as work in progress. And only when you finish the job and collect in full should you move the money from that liability account of deferred revenue onto your income statement into your income account on your P&L.
So a
And your COGS would be
be adjusted accordingly.
taken from your work in progress asset account on your balance sheet and
No,
moved over to
it's-
your COGS
okay.
on your P&L.
So, I mean, how important is it that the owner understand this versus the bookkeeper? Is it something that they both need to?
The owner needs to understand it at least from a conceptual standpoint, right? Like,
Yeah.
where is the money? How is it allocated and all that stuff? Because, I think what a lot of owners do is they do like bank balance accounting, right? Where they're like, oh, we have 200 grand in the bank account. We can use that to run the business.
Yeah. I've
In
got
reality,
budget.
in reality, they might have, 20 or $30,000. It's actually like net profit to the company, and not even counting what the working capital calculation in that number is that they should be using to run the business. And that's what keeping those separate will do, is it keeps it, this is over here as a liability. It's not your money yet. This is over here as work in progress.
And that makes a lot of sense because I see people check their bank account balance only because they know that their books aren't telling a true story.
Sure.
So they're like, well, I can look at my books, but I'm seeing there, I know is not a reflection of what's actually happening.
Yeah.
And so they could check their bank account instead.
It's that like confusion at the end of the year is, where'd all the money go?
Where did the money go?
Right.
What did we spend it on?
Yeah, because you're looking at,
how am I paying this much in taxes?
Exactly. And that's another great point of WIP accounting is, there's some could be serious tax implications of recording customer deposits as income. Because let's say at the end of the year, you've collected $1 million in customer deposits, but you haven't done the work yet. As soon as the year rolls over, and of course you're going to have expenses and all kinds of stuff to write off against that, but let's just say it's $1 million flatline income.
Yep.
You're going to owe what, 30% as soon as the year rolls over?
Not good.
And you haven't even done the work. You haven't recorded the expenses on that job. So you owe the government $300,000 on that $1 million, when in reality you might have, 70% job costs that you need to write off against that.
Very interesting.
And you should only be paying taxes on maybe $300,000, right? So it's a huge difference.
Yeah. Do you recommend multiple accounts for contractors?
Yeah. Multiple bank accounts, multiple, setting up your chart of accounts and your balance sheet appropriately in your accounting software. And that's where having a really knowledgeable, you asked, should the owner or accountant be more accountable for that? The owner needs to understand it, but the accountant needs to be an expert in it, right?
Sure.
The owner should be able to rely on that accountant as the subject matter expertise and follow their guidance versus wondering like, what the hell's going on in my business?
100%.
Yeah.
So when it comes to using SquareDash or something like this, well, let me ask, is there anything else like this or?
Not that I know of. I mean, there might be some other companies out there that are kind of flying under the radar. I'm not sure, but there's really, this is why we built the company, because we couldn't find anything that understood all of the nuances of how insurance claim could go, non-recoverable depreciation, paid when incurred,
what are the other options out there? Like if I'm having cash flow issues, if I didn't know about SquareDash, what am I doing instead?
Yeah, I mean, you could,
at least.
Let's say you can get a line of credit from your bank account, or your bank, excuse me. You can get a line of credit from your bank, but that becomes a management overhead that you have to constantly manage that. And doing job level reporting against a credit line when you're doing, a drawdown,
already complicated.
It's already complicated, and now you're having to like match exact transactions that you pull down from your credit line to cost and whatever you're using it for. It becomes an accounting nightmare. If you're trying to do job level accounting, maybe you can go get a loan. Maybe you can get an SBA loan or a loan from the bank. The problem with that is it has a term on it. It's 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 1 year, whatever it is. And at the end, you pay it off and you got to do the whole thing over again.
And then let's be honest,
nobody's getting a loan in the roofing industry, and nobody's qualifying for it.
But if you are, you usually see it in the form of like a F-350 within
exactly
like 6 months.
Yeah. Not very many roofing companies are going out and getting meaningful amounts of capital from a bank, whether a line of credit or a term loan, right?
Definitely.
And then your other option is MCAs, merchant cash advances. Those are extremely dangerous. They come with, 50, 60% interest rates. They take daily or weekly payments. And for a company that's already struggling with cash flow, the last thing you need to be doing is siphoning money out of the business on a daily basis. So
100%. And this is something that is unique to contractors that are working insurance work.
Yes.
Because this is not like a retail business where my accounts receivables issues are coming from just because I'm not following up with the customer. This is, I finished the work, we've done everything. We just can't wait the 30 to 60 to 90 days for that.
And not only the wait, right? You have to have the staff that can sit on hold with State Farm for 30 minutes to get a 30-second update on where the check is.
That's
and whoever
went perfectly.
Right. If everything went perfectly. No, it doesn't. Usually you call State Farm, you get a call center person, and they're like, oh, let me transfer you to the adjuster. And then they transfer you to the adjuster and it goes to their voicemail. And that happens for 3 or 4 weeks or 2 months or however long, right? It's extremely.
You get busy and you're like, oh crap, I need to call.
You get busy, and when you're trying to prioritize your day, like, there's other things that need to happen that might result in a result versus sitting on hold for 30 minutes where there is no result. So
And so
it
the
gets
big
pushed down.
difference here is that we're not necessarily getting a cash advance or a loan. This is, you mentioned a term.
Yeah, it's invoice factoring at
Invoice
its
factoring.
core, right?
Okay.
And um, invoice factoring goes back to, the 1300s, like merchant marine stuff. But
Okay.
basically, it's an asset purchase, right? You have a contract and you have a receivable that's owed to you by a customer, and it's worth a certain amount of money. And when you sell that receivable, typically the factor, the company that's buying it from you, is going to buy it at a discount. So there's no interest charge, there's no fee. It's a discount, and it would be no different than if you had a truck to sell. I lived in Texas, you live in Florida. We both agree the blue book on it is $10,000. I say, hey, I'll offer you $9,500. I'll give you $8,500 now, and then I'll give you the other $1,000 when it gets delivered to Texas in a couple of weeks. Right? Gets delivered. I wire you the $1,000. You're out $500. It costs you $500 to facilitate that transaction. I go sell that truck for $10,000 and I make a profit of $500. That's what invoice factoring is. It's
Got
that
it.
instead of a truck, it's your receivable on the claim. And instead of delivering the vehicle, we're collecting in full, right?
So you mentioned you're purchasing a contract, basically,
Mhm.
to some extent, at a discount.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. The
or-
discounts, it can be viewed as your fee. It's your cost to do that transaction. But where that differs from all of the other products that we talked about, loans, lines of credit that charge interest at an annual rate, and are very hard to map back to an individual job, invoice factoring is at the job level,
Per
right?
invoice, yeah.
And it becomes a job cost, and you can split that with your sales rep, or you can just record it as a job cost, just like you would any other cog on that job.
Okay.
And it makes the accounting very, very easy and job level, so you can track it a lot easier.
Now, obviously, when you're purchasing a contract, it's got to be a solid contract.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, because I know a lot of contractors, especially in the insurance world, are just like, "Oh, you've got approved paperwork. Let's do this. Sign the scope here, or whatever."
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, what you find in the insurance restoration space, especially with new salespeople or new companies or whatever, it's not that hard to sell a roof, a $20,000 roof that 95 or 90% of is being paid by the insurance
Yep.
carrier, right?
100%.
It's not a hard sell. You're basically order take.
Kind of hurt your half your sales guys' egos there, but
Hey, it's all right. I mean,
it's true.
you still have to be personable, and you still have to
Yep.
care about what you do, and
Yep.
form that
Yep.
relationship with the people. But it's much different than trying to sell someone a $20,000 roof at a sticker price of $20,000, right? Their sticker price is their deductible. And so that lends itself to a lot of not great practices on contract side of things. When you write in insurance proceeds instead of writing $20,000.
The contract says we'll do this for insurance
Yeah, the
purposes.
contract where the price line is, they literally write for insurance proceeds. Your only out of pocket is your deductible. Well, that's great for explaining it to the homeowner, but that's
Sure.
not really a valid contract,
That's
because
contract.
what is the consideration on that contract? And contract law 101, like, you have to have a written
It's
agreement.
kind of ironic that the contractor
Yes.
failing to write a good
Understand the
contract.
contract. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to have a written agreement, but for pure contract law 101 people out there,
Well, like you're
but
saying, if you're buying a contract, there does need to be
yes, for us to buy it, it needs to be a written contract.
needs to be a
And it needs to have a dollar amount on it, right? Because the agreement plus the consideration, the money, and it could be the deposit, it could be the full amount. That consideration is what actually solidifies it as a binding contract between you and the other party. And if you don't have that, you're kind of starting off on a really bad foot. And that's something we do when we onboard contractors, is we kind of do an audit of their or an assessment, not an audit. That sounds scary, but it's just an assessment of, where they're at with their paperwork and their processes and their systems and all that good stuff. Because a mechanics lien is pretty much the only recourse a contractor has. And every state has its own laws and its own timelines and requirements, whether you have to do a preliminary lien notice before work starts, or you can just do that after the fact. It's state by state. And some of them have specific language that needs to be in your contract. And if your contract's not in order, you're kind of forfeiting your lien rights before you even start the work. And that's not good, right? That's not good, because there are homeowners out there that will stiff you and won't pay you.
So you go to file a lien and they're saying, no, you can't
you got to file a lien. And what a lot of people don't know is if you don't perfect the lien, if you don't actually do it right, they can countersue you in some cases,
Really?
and they will win, right? And so
Interesting.
it's super important from a financial standpoint and from a risk standpoint
Mhm.
to understand the contract laws specific to your state and how those pertain to the lien laws as well. So, really important.
So that contract that's written ahead of time needs to have a written price? I mean, this is like you said, it's contractor 101, but insurance world, there's always so many variables, at least that we know that can come up, like supplements. How does that work? So you have a written agreement, they sign saying, I want you to do the work for 20,000, but there's supplements involved.
Yeah, supplement's just like a change order in,
Yeah.
the general contracting space or the regular construction world. It's a change order, and it needs to be recorded on maybe not a separate like build contract, but you need to have like a change order form that the customer signs and acknowledges that, hey, there's $12,000 more coming on this claim, and it's owed to us because it's work we're doing. Because I don't know how many times this has happened to contractors where, that customer gets alligator arms when that supplement checks comes in. They're like, "Ooh, I got an extra $12,000. I thought that was mine.
Yeah.
Paid out to me." Right.
Yep.
So documentation is important. You can always go back to it, and it keeps the conversations from getting weird, right? Because if you do it ahead of time and you just kind of you explain it to your customer and they sign off on it, then when it comes time on the back end to collect, you can always reference back to that, and you don't have to like be put on the spot of like explaining yourself. You've already done that in the beginning when you got the change order signed.
So if you're coming in and purchasing the contract ahead of time, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, I mean, we have there's kind of several different permutations of how a job could land in
Okay.
SquareDash's
Did
lap.
you go through that?
Yeah, I mean, it could be new, right? They might not have started production yet. Maybe they just have a signed.
Upcoming insurance related claim.
Yeah. Well, the claim's been approved, but they just haven't scheduled it or ordered materials or
Okay.
whatever yet.
And you have a signed contract.
Yeah. They have to have a signed contract and an approved
Yep.
insurance scope for us to purchase that and
Okay.
work with them on that. It could be in progress, right? They could be in the middle of the job. They've done the roof. They're waiting on the gutters, or it could be completely finished. And so there's kind of different, things that are involved at each phase of that. But generally speaking, most contractors are submitting it to us when it's either in progress or completed because
Okay.
um, they don't really want to mess with their front end processes. They collect deductibles and the ACV check at the time of contract signing or the day of build or whatever the case may be. So that's not really affecting their cash conversion cycle, right? They haven't really outlaid capital yet, and they're able to collect that money on the front end. So they would rather not incur those fees with us on advancing that money
Okay.
because we only charge our fee, or excuse me, our discount. Our discount is only based on what we're purchasing. So if all that's left on the claim is the depreciation, we're just purchasing that depreciation, and you're only paying a discount on 30 or 40% of the claim, which ends up being like a 1 to 2% job
So if I've
cost.
got like a $20,000 roof, I collect a $2,000 deductible, an $8,000 ACV check. I'm only selling you the
Sure.
$10,000
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
remaining balance.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then how does that go through my office? Like,
Yeah. So usually there's like a point man at the company, whether that's your office admin or your office manager. Um, we need a copy of the contract, a copy of the insurance scope, your invoice, and then any proofs of payment that you've already collected offline, just so that we can, because we're creating a digital duplicate of that in our
got it.
platform.
Okay.
We have some patented technology that can parse all the insurance scope information and get all the claim logic out of there, so that we know how the economics of the claim are working, when the money's coming, what's being held back, all that good stuff. They send all that documentation to us. We reconcile it, make sure it all matches, make sure there's no confusion on anything. That's immediately available in their portal when they log in. And then as soon as they get a certificate of completion signed, which they can do through our platform, we have a DocuSign integration, so they can send that COC to the customer directly from their portal. As soon
That's
as that,
super cool.
yeah, or they can upload theirs if they have it already signed. If they did it offline, we can
I know a lot
accept
of
that.
contractors miss that though on the certificate of completion.
Yeah,
They just finish the work and then say, let's get
yeah, they just leave the homeowner on the side of the road and just
yeah,
start
yeah.
billing the
Start
insurance carrier. I mean, it's like that homeowner's like, what's going on?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's
exactly.
really important. It's just a nice.
You require that.
Yeah, we require that because we need the homeowner's involvement, right? Like we need to know that this is a real claim, that work's being done, that the homeowner's
Very
involved,
interesting.
so that contractors aren't taking a scope out of their 6-month-old stack of jobs and trying to get advances on it.
No, for sure. And this is something that sounds like this is like if I'm working with SquareDash, I'm gonna improve my processes just in general,
Sure.
because I need to apply good contract practices regardless of whether I'm not
Yeah.
working with you. But you're gonna force improved processes on AR for the entire company. What it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, we're acting as a third party to your company, right? We're coming in and either becoming your billing staff or heavily augmenting your billing
Okay, so
staff.
there's two parts to this. I just
Yeah,
realized that
yeah,
you've got not just the bind the invoice, but also the billing administration.
correct. Yeah, when we first started the business, we were just doing the factoring and purchasing the receivables.
Okay,
Feedback we got from contractors was like, "Hey, I don't mind paying the fee because we're getting the cash, and it's pretty cheap compared to most
good discount.
capital out there."
Yes.
Yeah, um, but I still got to pay my people to collect the money. And at the time, they had 90 days to collect it, and they were like, "If we don't collect it in 90 days, then you're gonna charge me back less the fee." And so, like, it seems like it's adding risk, and we heard that, and we were like, "You're right. What could we do about that?" And, um, they were like, "Well, could you collect the money for us?" And we were like, "Yeah, I guess we could." So we started our managed billing services side of the business, based on that feedback to where now we become the billing, staff that follows up with all the stakeholders and figure out where the money is.
Like
It's all told.
billing admin for health insurance or something like that.
Yeah, medical billing is probably the most relevant,
Okay.
analogy we use. We tell people all the time, when you go to the doctor, Dr. Thomas is treating you and figuring out what's wrong with you. Nurse Betty's scheduling your next appointment. Neither one of them are the ones stuffing the envelope for the bill that
I'm
comes in
getting
the
a
mail.
bill from ABC Bill. And
You're getting a bill that says Dr. Thomas on there, but it's it's
so is
the
that
other
how you
company.
do it?
We're a little more transparent. We tell them we're SquareDash because we're doing welcome calls and getting introduced to them because we
Interesting.
just like to keep everything transparent and full visibility so that they
So
understand
before the
what's going
job
on.
even starts, the contractor is introducing you
Yeah,
to the homeowner.
yeah. They're typically we have marketing
This is our
collateral.
billing partner.
Yep. Just like when you go to the doctor, we train them to use that analogy with their customers. And it makes perfect sense, right?
Okay.
SquareDash focuses on all the tedium of getting the money and dealing with your insurance carrier, mortgage company. So we can focus on building the best roof possible for you and do what we specialize in. And it makes perfect sense
So
to
once
everybody.
the contractor sells the remaining balance invoice, whatever, to you,
Mhm.
what's their involvement moving forward? Like,
They just make sure the customer has a good experience, right?
okay,
Do what you would normally do, minus having to follow up on all the money
well,
and
I mean that's a
collect
big
money.
part of it, though.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
gonna go really great, and all of a sudden it's just like this huge headache of trying to get that insurance check in for a host of like the mortgage company and all that. How do y'all deal with that?
actually, we partner with Inc. Payments for our mortgage endorsements. They've built a best-in-class platform, much like we've done it for moving the money. They've done it for digitizing the signature, the endorsements on checks that have the lender listed as a payee on the check. Because a lot of times, if you
Interest.
still have a mortgage on the home, your lender is going to be listed as a payee because they have to sign off on two. So you have to put a packet of paperwork together, mail it off to the mortgage company, wait for 2 or 3 months while they do whatever they do before they send it back to you and you can deposit it. So it slows things down tremendously.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we're able to partner with Inc. so they can speed that process up. And as soon as the FedEx label is scanned through Inc.'s platform and it's on its way to the mortgage company, contractor can take an advance on the ACV if they want to.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when they're working with Inc., is that like another membership they have to have or another
No,
fee?
it's actually included in the monthly, subscription for our billing services.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, they can still have their Ink portal if they have files with Ink already or they wanna use it on files that they're not sending to us for whatever reason. But it's typically they would much rather us just deal with it,
And
right? And we just handle it, and it's behind the scenes. They don't ever have
okay.
to log in or see it. They get a link where they have to sign it, and that's it.
So you're handling on the billing side, you're handling all billing, all AR?
Yeah, I mean, any insurance claim, that they have is what we specialize in.
Okay.
If there's retail work that they're doing, if they want us to collect that, they can include that in there, but we just typically don't see that,
Sure.
as a request from our.
So one of the biggest things that we would run into picking up the recoverable depreciation check is dealing with the adjusters on the back end.
Yeah,
So you're saying that I don't have to do that when I'm using SquareDash?
correct. You don't have to as soon as you're done with the job, as soon as you sell the job and you submit it to us and you build the roof, your work is pretty much done, right?
You're calling the adjuster?
We're calling the adjuster.
How does that work?
What do you mean?
So like, I mean, there's a lot of communication a lot of times that the adjuster is needing.
Yeah.
and you're just going through the
Yeah,
documentation.
we're going through the
You're handling all this.
documentation. That's why we request that documentation up front. And we have a release coming probably this summer
Okay.
that will automate the retrieval of all of that information out of whatever CRM you're using, so you don't actually have
Well,
to submit it to us. But right now, it's documentation that
sure,
already
like
should
you
exist,
normally do, yeah.
and you just package that up and send it to us one time. But once we have all that information, then we're armed with all the information we need to talk to an adjuster or mortgage company to figure out where the money is and when it was released and how much and when it
So
was.
you introduced the adjuster as well on the front end?
No, we don't.
No.
Usually don't give us an issue, but all of our documentation is easily provided to them to show that, our contractual relationship with the contractor, we are now the owner of the receivable, and give me the
And
information I
you
need.
find they're pretty okay with that
Yeah, we don't
setup?
really run into issues
'Cause
with
this is
that.
not an assignment of benefits or anything like.
No, we're not assigning the claim to ourselves. We're buying the original contract, the original build contract, and all the rights and, recourse that exist in that contract, not the claim. It's the contract between the contractor and the
So
property.
the homeowner writes a check to SquareDash.
They can write a check to SquareDash and mail it to us. They can log into our portal. We make it really easy. If you've ever paid a bill online, you can use
Okay.
our portal.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
it's all encrypted and secure, and they can make their deductible payment. They can make their claims proceed payments. They can make any payments through our portal. It kind of automates the whole process, because if we've bought that receivable from the contractor, then we're owed that money. And if we are, it flows to us. If we're not, it flows to the contractor's wallet on our platform, and they can transfer that same thing out to
So
their bank account.
how does that work on, like, mechanics lanes, for example? So if someone doesn't end up paying, who's filing that lien? How's that working?
Yeah, so since we're the owner of the contract now, we file the lien in our name, and
With the local.
with whatever local jurisdiction
Is it
the job's located in.
interesting.
Yeah,
And you're keeping up with all of the requirements that will make that lien effective.
that's right. Yeah, that's why it's important for us to kind of do that assessment in the beginning to make sure, the contract is standing on solid ground, and we're not putting ourselves at risk on the back end of this, trying to collect on something that, we've lost the rights on. So it's
That
really important for the whole process to work.
well, I feel like there's a lot of contractors who their AR problems are less like bad customers and bad insurance agents or adjusters, whatever, and just bad processes over.
Oh, 100%. That's maybe a 50-50, maybe a 60-40 split, 60 on the contractor, 40 on the other parties, because, there's so many times as a roofing contractor that, I finish a job, thought that I sent out the invoice, realized 2 weeks later I didn't send out the invoice, send the invoice, forget about it for 2 weeks
Yep.
because I'm flying with my hair on fire, right? And then wonder why it's taken forever to get paid. It's like I'm causing the slowdown.
Days later,
Yeah.
I'm going, where's the money at?
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, oh crap, I didn't do everything I should have done and the timelines that I should have done. And also another really important point, and we stress this with, kind of trying to translate our value to contractors, is most roofing companies out there, especially in the insurance space, leverage their salespeople as collection agents, right? The salesperson is the one going out there to collect the check because they want to get it in the door as fast as possible. That means your salesperson, who you hired to generate revenue in your company and go out and get more deals and sell more deals, is now spending 30 or 45 minutes driving across the Metroplex to meet with Miss Betty. He's got to maintain a rapport with her, so he's going to sit down and talk to her for a minute and do a walk around with her. So he spends 30 or 45 minutes there, and then another 45 minutes back. It's probably in the afternoon, so the office is closed. So he's holding on to a $30,000 check in the glove box of his truck, right? He's got to remember to go to the bank. There's just all this minutia that happens that wastes that salesperson's time on what you hired them to do.
This is to go wrong at too.
So many places, right? Like there's a video, a buddy of mine, it's one of his salespeople jumping into a pond because he was holding the check and the wind blew and blew the check into the pond. So this dude's like covered in pond scum because he had to jump in and chase this $30,000 check out of the water.
Oh my.
So, stuff like there's all kinds of like friction, and it's incredibly inefficient to have your salespeople going and collecting your money.
100%.
And, we found that companies that are structured that way and do it when they work with us, they can get like a 10% lift on revenue because their salespeople are not wasting 2 hours per check that they're picking up. They can actually go sell more jobs. And if they only sell one more job a month, that's 12 extra jobs a year times $20,000. That's another $240,000 per rep.
So tie that back into the actual fees that you guys charge for this then, or the discounts, how that works from the invoice purchasing to the administrative side of things.
Yeah. So,
'Cause, I mean, that sounds like that's amazing numbers,
yeah.
and I'm assuming it's more than what I'm spending on the
Yes.
product.
Let's say, you're million and a half, $2 million contractor, and you're kind of becoming a real boy, as I say, in a real business, and you need to start hiring people within the business to manage the back office. To get a competent person to work in your business and be knowledgeable enough and have the wherewithal to do what you need done, you're gonna have to pay them $6,000-7,000 a month, right? You're gonna have to pay them
Yep,
a livable wage.
sure.
Um, and hope that they work out and deal with their sick kids and their days off and hope that
Work in progress invoicing is.
have all the knowledge and all of that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
As a package deal for $6,000 or $7,000 a month, that's like a needle in a haystack for a lot of companies. You
Sure.
really kind of have to like train them over time to do that, and hope that you can retain them.
Yep.
The way that we,
Good challenge.
yeah, exactly. The way that we work is we just take a look at the business, how many deals you're doing, what your current revenue is at, how many deals that's translating in, and kind of compute, how many deals we're gonna expect to be collecting and how we're gonna have to staff for that. But where we can kind of deliver economies of scale is if we have one person that all they do all day is call insurance carriers, and all this person does all day is call homeowners, and all this person does all day is deal with contractors and all, down the line, we can distribute them across multiple companies and achieve economies of scale that you just can't do by hiring one person in your company.
100%.
So a $2 million contractor is probably going to pay us like $1,500 a month to collect all their money. And that's good on like an annual contract. So we're going to help them grow. They're probably going to end up $2 or $3 million. But they're achieving benefit throughout that contract.
They're
with
buying back
us.
their time.
They're buying back their time. They're freeing up bandwidth. They're able to retrain their sales reps on what they actually hired them
The
to do.
reducing exposure.
They're reducing risk in the business, and they're enjoying their cash flow immediately. We get you paid, like when you click the get paid button in our platform, it takes about 30 seconds to transfer the money to your wallet, and it's a same day transfer out to your bank account.
That's a
So like
beautiful thing.
it's the fastest, cheapest money a roofing contractor in this space is going to find.
And it's unique because of the insurance process. This is not
Yeah.
something you do for retail
We don't, right?
companies.
Because retail, there's still some question, over is that the actual dollar
You
amount?
shouldn't
Who's
have
agreed to it?
issues if it's retail.
Yeah, retail, you should be getting paid pretty soon. A lot of retail companies are set up with finance companies,
Yes.
financing stuff, and so the money's pretty quick on retail side of things. But with insurance carriers or insurance claims, the carrier is the one that's paying, and they've agreed to it by issuing that scope of loss, and that's why we scan that scope of loss in and kind of base everything off of that. Because we're kind of underwriting the fact this isn't an approved claim. This isn't just like
Because so if I'm
a handwritten contract.
sure.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing like let's say $2.5 million a year,
Mhm.
doing a couple roofs a week, couple claims, 8 claims a month, what am I paying for you to handle the admin?
Yeah, you're probably going to pay $1,500-1,600 a month, something like that.
Hey, wow.
We'll collect all your money. And
And I'm getting funding as well, or
yeah,
is
the
that
funding is additional. It's
Okay.
a typical discount on most plans that we have contractors on is a 5% discount.
okay?
So if we go back to the truck analogy, right, on a 10,000, say they have a $10,000 depreciation check that they want to fund,
Okay.
we're going to offer them 9,500 for that. That's like the borrowing base that we establish. We're going to give them 8,500 up front. When we collect in full, we're going to pass that $1,000 reserve back to them, and their net cost on that is a $500 discount.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cheaper than an actual loan.
Yeah, because when you take into account depreciation is typically 30 to 40% of a
Yeah.
claim,
Yep.
and you're only paying 5% on that, it's like a 1 to 2% job cost. It's less than a credit card transaction. And
That's
people hear 5% and they're like, "Oh, I'm not paying 5% on my revenue." It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
it's not
5% on your revenue. It's 5% on whatever you fund.
Yeah.
And when you put that on the job, it's
And it's less
super
that-
palatable.
It's all the things.
Yeah, when you take into the revenue lift, the reduction in staff and overhead, the increased cash flow that you can use to grow your business, hire more sales reps, buy more trucks, open more locations, right? Use the money in your business. It's not uncommon for us to be able to show like 150 to 200% ROI after 12 months.
And this is also helping. Go ahead.
Just because it's all aligned in growing the business,
Sure.
right? If you're not in growth mode or you don't know what you're going to do with the money, probably not going to get a lot of value out of what we
Exactly.
do, right? If you're just bebopping along and you're happy making $200,000 or $300,000 a year selling roofs yourself, that's great. Keep doing that, right? But
Sure.
we're just not going to
If
be
you're
able to
actually
deliver.
want to scale.
But if you're trying to scale and grow your business, that costs a lot of money, and it has to come from your working capital. And if people out there should look up their return on working capital equation. It's an efficiency metric for your business. It's not something you need to necessarily track all the time, but it shows how efficient you are at using your money. And on a 60-day turnaround, it's like you've got like an 85% return on working capital, right? That's not very efficient. When you're getting paid in 2 days, it's like 3,000%. It's a huge delta between the efficiency of how you can use your money in your business. So it's really important to like understand some of those.
So your ideal client is where on that? Just curious. Where I mean,
our
you're
ideal
working
client,
with
our sweet spot. We have customers all over the board, but our sweet spot is $2 to $15 million in top line, because 2 to 8 is where contractors go to die. That's where it becomes
very true.
It goes from being a hobby and this kind of like side gig that you're really
really
good at,
people I need.
right? To, oh, this is a real business with real overhead and really long payment cycles. We're in trouble, right? And so that's where we find most of our customers.
If I get like some straight line wins through my town, and all of a sudden I go from doing like 2 roofs a week to like 30, and I don't want to die, I can just get funded like 10 times.
Yeah, I mean, as you have claims approved and you're submitting it to us, and they pass all the QA checks and everything, and you go through the process, just click get paid, and the money's in your account.
This makes me almost want to get back into roofing again.
Do it. We'll be here for you.
But I really love doing this type of work too.
Yeah.
I was in it for my entire life.
Yeah.
But no, that was the biggest thing. I did sales for a little bit. My dad owned the company, so I ended up doing a lot of the different things from admin. And I know that the cash flow, 100%, the number one challenge.
Nobody's staying awake at night wondering, oh man, how many leads did we get today? How many doors did we knock? They're staying awake at night because they're about to go out of business, right?
Yeah,
that's what keeps you awake.
Confusing because for especially good companies, I think, because they see the sales in, they see the leads are up, they see all this happening, but it's just the cash flow.
And this is
not normal.
This is a universally linear problem, right? Just because you sell more, unless you're like a cash flow ninja and you're stashing acorns off to the side, right? Like, you're always going to have this problem. Like, if you're getting paid 60 to 90 days, always on every claim you're doing, it doesn't matter if you sell 2 of them or 2,000 of them. It's going to be a problem in your business.
Might even be worse off.
It's going to be worse, actually.
It's going to be worse.
The bigger the company is, sometimes the riskier it is for us, because they are so far down the black hole of robbing Peter to pay Paul that it's just a perpetual like Ponzi scheme. That's, they don't intend to do that, right? They don't get into business to do that, but it becomes this beast that you keep having to feed. And
they don't, they're gonna go to jail.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, the people you see on the news are the people that weren't cash flow ninjas and didn't figure it out and ended up not being able to build the customer's job.
You look at a lot of books.
Yes.
What's the
oh man, there's all kinds
you've seen.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff we've seen. I mean, from monthly trips to Costa Rica to OnlyFans subscriptions to all kinds of stuff on the business account that should not be there,
that they didn't want on their personal account.
That they didn't want on their personal account, I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the reasons for putting on the business account, other than like they're using it like their
expense.
Yeah, they're just using the company as their personal ATM. Like, those are the business we're going to stay away from.
So if you look at stuff like this, I'm sure there's not like a legal advice that you're giving, obviously, but you're able to give feedback to them on that. Like you said, not an audit necessarily, but an assessment. Like, hey, you need to improve here and here and here before we work with you.
Yeah, it depends on how bad it is, right? We can tell if it's like a really bad company.
I'm running all my personal expenses through my personal account.
Yeah, we can kind of tell just from a quick look at the financials if this is a bad actor, or if this is just someone that needs a little process improvement. And we obviously have our own underwriting requirements that we don't divulge, but but yeah, we can offer guidance and tell them why, or hey, try back in 6 months, or fix these things, and we can work together in the future. We try and give that feedback. So
super cool.
Yeah,
man, it's really, really cool to see this. Really a new, right? It's not been around that.
Yeah, we've been around a couple of years. Yeah, we launched at the end of 2023, or third quarter of 23.
Started with the invoice factoring.
Yep.
Now you're doing invoice factoring and admin you're introducing, did I hear an AI
Yeah,
assistant?
yeah. Coming up in the summer, most contractors use the CRM, Job Nimbus, AccuLinks, Roofer,
Yes.
Proline. Um, as long as the CRM has an API, you'll be able to use our assistant, kind of like if you're familiar with Grammarly or like
Okay.
the Microsoft Clippy that used to like
Yep, yep.
pop up
Wet
every now and then,
Grammarly, yeah.
right? Um, it will be able to go in and read all of your information, all of your data in your company, and know, hey, this build date is coming up. Let's start tracking that. Or the build date is passed. Do you want me to send this invoice? Right. This customer hasn't paid in 45 days. Do you want to file a lien?
And this is just popping up on the side
It's
of your
just popping up on the side of your screen. And it's just kind of like lives in the corner of the screen down below or wherever you drag it to. And whenever you pop it open, there'll be, whatever reminders are there for you. It is there for you to kind of follow up on, execute. You can review it. You can edit it. It'll draft your emails for you that are relevant to things that have happened on that job.
super
Taking into account other communications that have happened for context with that customer. And what's really cool is it will actually be able to like review your vendor POs and invoices to make sure you're not getting overcharged and there's no discrepancies. It'll be able to
oh.
write your supplements for you in Xactimate format. It's really cool stuff. Really cool stuff coming, and
And
it's agnostic.
okay.
It lives in the browser just like a browser extension, so it can work with any system that has an API. So you don't have to worry about vendor lock. And
Cool.
if there's specific things that vendors that your software solutions that you work with that have APIs, we'll be able to train models and kind of incorporate those as you need. But
As long as it has an open API.
yeah, as long as it has an API, we have some really cool browser automations that we can do. We try not to rely on those because those are a
Sure.
little less stable than the APIs. But yeah, like we're living in a wild time right now where AI is taking over the world, and a lot of the tedious stuff that humans had to do in the past, computers will do for us.
So I'm assuming is that gonna be like at a different price point, or I'm just getting that?
We'll certainly adjust the pricing accordingly to bring as much
Sure.
value to our customers as
Yeah.
possible. Obviously, if we're replacing
That
humans in
that's
our
actually doing
company,
more than what you're
oh,
currently
it's
doing.
doing a lot more than what we're doing right now. So we'll have to figure out where the pricing ends up, but
Yeah.
it's still gonna deliver tremendous value to.
Long term, what is do I go to SquareDash banking to my checking account and everything? Like, a lot of banks started out as invoice factoring
Yeah, it's been talked about on our roadmap to provide a kind of full service
full.
financial back office solution that kind of automates as much of the back office as
That's
possible.
super cool because there's so many. I think there's so many, like you said, there's some really great companies out there. They could just get this right.
Yep.
That's what's holding them back, or even
Most companies
customers
focus
killing it.
on sales and marketing and production. That's where like 90% of their attention goes. And then the bastard child of collecting the money and managing the office and all that stuff is kind of on the back burner.
One last question. I hear a lot of people talk about market, like you said, sales marketing, like the numbers you need to be spending like 5 to 7% on this. When it comes to financial administration, whatever, what is,
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, it really depends on the business. But
'cause it sounds like what you're charging makes sense inside of,
yeah, I mean, what we're charging is probably like, if you had to calculate it, maybe like 1% of revenue, when most companies are spending 5 to 6, maybe even 8% on personnel cost in the business.
all said and done, they're spending almost 8%.
Yeah, I mean, it can be really expensive depending on how efficient you are, and that's where software comes into play. Jake Bryden from RoofLink, um, you know, his company Heritage Construction does mid 7 figures, right? Like, I mean, or 8 figures, um, and they do that with like an office staff of like 6 people or something. Whereas before, he was struggling to do a third of his revenue with like 20 people in the
It's
office.
super exciting.
And so automations can bring a lot of leverage into your business.
What's the best way for someone to get started with SquareDash?
Yeah, just go to squaredash.com. There's orange buttons all over the screen. Say schedule a consultation. That'll get you to one of our account executives that can learn more about your business, how you operate, see if it's a good fit, kind of explain how we work.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Sounds simple. And then you specifically, Matt Frugé has all kinds of contractor helpful knowledge.
Yeah.
Are you releasing anything? Writing a book?
I've never wanted to be like a guru or a trainer or anything like that, but I just feel like this is
This is really good information.
it's such a black hole in our industry
is.
of like, people don't get in the industry. People don't get into the roofing industry because they were great administrators, right? They get into the business because they're great salespeople or they're great installers or what. It's on the trade side of things,
Yep.
right? And that's where the soul of the business is in dealing with customers and
Yes.
building stuff and making meaningful improvements in other people's lives, right? So I've toyed with releasing like a financial literacy kind of university type thing. We're not going to charge for it. We'll just put it out there for free because I think it's really important information for people to know when they get involved in this industry, because it seems the saying all that glitters isn't gold. The numbers can be very alluring to people and get them into the business, but then they figure out the realities of running the business and they're like, oh my God, what did I do?
Yeah, the Philippine burgers and
Yeah.
next year, like,
Or they just go back to doing whatever they were doing before they got into it. Yeah.
roofing should be a great, and it is a great thing to get in.
I love this industry, right? It's giving me and my family everything we have, but there's some really big systemic structural problems in the insurance restoration.
You're solving this.
I'm trying. Yeah.
Matt, thank you so much for the time, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you guys. See you in the next one.